Welcome everybody, I'm MC Sebzi. Welcome to the Monkaroos channel. Today I'll be doing something that I really enjoy doing. It's magic deck brewing. These are decks that I've built personally, and today I'm starting off with one of my first ever commander decks, Omnath, Locus of Mana. So, I have the deck here up on Moxfield, so if you're looking to check it out and stuff, I got a bunch of other decks as well. But yeah, you know, some prototypes, some that I've already previously built, and I'm sure I'll do a video on everything I got at some point. Anyways, we're starting off with Omnath. He is 2 and a green for a 1/1 elemental, and green mana doesn't empty from my mana pool as steps and phases end, and he gets +1/+1 for each green mana in my mana pool. Very great, makes him really nice and big. But lets me, more importantly, bank up mana. So when I originally built this deck, I made it 50% land, 50% cards, basically. I just wanted a big chunk of land, and it's still true to that after many iterations and changes. It's got 40 land, mostly basics, with the occasional, you know, other type of land just to help out, but not really a big land. So let's just start it off. Planeswalkers. I got 5 of them. Nissa is probably one of the biggest ones, allows my mana to tap for an additional green, as well as gives me other effects that let me pull a lot of lands from my deck and whatnot. Garrix are going to be key since I have 46 creatures. Savage Herald lets me reveal top cards and eventually have my creatures basically be unblockable. Garrick Primal Hunter, the big one on him is I get to draw land, or get a 6/6 token for each land I control, which again will be many. Draw cards equal to the greatest power is also a good one. Also, Garrick Caller of Beasts lets me draw or look through my deck, get a bunch of creatures out. Also drop creatures from my hand for free, which we'll get to, which will be very crucial. Garrick Wildspeaker allows me to untap some lands so I can get more into my mana pool, pump in Omnath, and also saving up for future turns. Before we get into the creatures, I just want to quickly point out my sorceries. These are the only 2 non-permanent cards I have in my deck, mainly because of Primal Surge, which lets me exile the top card of my library, and if it's a permanent card, I get to repeat it, and it goes right onto the battlefield. This is great. The best way to do this is to have no other non-permanent cards. It'll hit all my lands, it'll hit my enchantments, it'll hit my creatures, and my planeswalkers. I have one other sorcery, Boundless Realms, which has always been in the deck, so I didn't want to take it out. It basically doubles up my lands and prevents Primal Surge from decking me, which, you know, is a good thing. So at least I'll get half my deck at most. And if I'm lucky, it's one of the bottom cards in my deck. Boundless Realms also great. But yeah, let's get into some of the creatures. So for some protection from flyers, I don't have a lot of reachers in the deck, so just Rashi destroys a lot of flying creatures with its ability, or if I channel it. Also with the X, I'm going to have a lot of green mana in my mana pool, so it's a great way to put a lot of mana into. Archetype of Endurance gives all my creatures hexproof. Avenger of Zendikar, almost an auto-include in this kind of deck. Lots of lands, big creatures, lots of landfall triggers. Bane of Progress helps me wipe out a lot of the artifact and enchantments that'll be posing threats on the board. Also a nice big creature. Beanstalk Giant lets me search my library for a basic land card, and also gets buffed for each land I have, which will be many. Beast Whisperer just helps me to draw cards. Engulfing Slagworm's just another big body that destroys anything in its way. Endrace Forerunner is kind of an overrun effect that I can drop and, you know, have all my creatures get this big buff of trample, which not a lot of these large creatures have, surprisingly. Elder Scale Worm, a great lifesaver deck. This deck is mostly creatures, so, you know, at some points I will be taking a lot of damage, and this helps me stay alive a bit longer, not a lot of removal. Dungrove Elder, again, hexproof, power and toughness equals the number of the forests. Druid of Purification, again, takes out, you know, unwanted enchantments and artifacts that my opponents play, so that's where, like, my removal is. Cultivated Colossus, one of the newer cards, great addition to this deck. Having 40 lands means I'm always having lands in my hand, or at least coming off my deck. This just goes off in this deck. It's sort of a Primal Surge Junior. Experiment 1, just some early turn plays, and it gets bigger and bigger as I drop bigger and bigger things. Garrix Harbinger allows me to pull creatures and Garrick Planeswalkers from the top of my deck when it attacks. Garrix Horde lets me play with the top card revealed, and not really too potent on having that be an issue. I like being the threat with this deck, so I want my enemies to answer what I have, and if anything, it's a scare tactic when I got something huge on top of my library. Genesis Hydra, I have a few X-Spell Hydras just so I can really drop all my mana into it. Once I got Omnath with like 30 plus mana, this comes in for a crazy amount. Also great ability on it. Galta will cost X less for the total power of creatures. Half the time it'll cost 2 green mana, which is great, even more than half the time. 12/12 trample. Giant Adaphage 7/7 trample that will copy itself every time it deals damage. Mana Gorger Hydra, great. All players will be playing spells at some point, and this will just get bigger and bigger. Kogla's great. I can make it fight something when it enters, and then when it attacks again, I can get rid of artifacts and enchantments. Kalani Hydra, sorry. It costs green less for each green creature I control. This comes out pretty quick as well. 8/8 trample. Iron Scale Hydra, anytime it takes damage, prevents it, gets a counter. Also big Hydra. This got Monstrosity X for Hydra Broodmaster. I can create tons of XX Hydras with all the mana I have. Hornet Queen's great, also blocks a lot of the flyers in the air, great protection. Multigraph Monstrosity, it allows me to get a bit of recurrence on some of my big creatures once they get taken out. Moldiah Channelers allows me to play the top card revealed again, and if it's a creature, it gets +3/+3. If it's a land, it taps for 2 green. So, well, it taps for 2 of any color, but I'll use it for green. This is a great addition. Half my deck is creatures and lands. Well, all my deck is creatures and lands. Old Growth Troll is just a cheap 4/4 trample, and when it dies, it makes my forest tap for 2 mana, which benefits me. Peleka Worm, enters the battlefield, gains 7 life, dies, draws a card. Great big stompy creature. Predator Ooze, indestructible, so that'll be nice, and every time it attacks it gets a counter, and when it destroys something it gets a counter. Again, inevitably gets bigger. Primordial Hydra, another X Hydra, doubles the number of Hydras, gets trample if it has 10 or more, pretty easy to get to that. Silklash Spider's another one of my flyer preventions, just to make sure I get rid of anything that I can't block. Scoop Mob is in here. This was one of the first cards I put in here too. If I control 5 or more lands, it's got 4 +1/+1 counters on it. It gets big so quick, especially, coming out turn 1. I would like to put Scoot Swarm as well, but unfortunately don't have it. I'm not, big on the money valve section, so, Sakiko, Mother of Summer. This is great. It makes all my mana tap for 2. Again, doubles my Omnath size and the mana I can bank up. Renata, her powers are equal to my devotion to green. As you can see, a lot of these have 3 to more pips, so that's really good when it comes in. It's just a big creature, and it gives all my other creatures a +1 counter. Rampaging Baloths, Landfall, get a 4/4 beast, can't go wrong. Primordial Sage is one of the newer additions. Again, just helps me draw cards when I cast my big creatures. Symbiotic Worm, when it dies, it gets 7 1/1s. Just again, this big creature that can do more than just be a single large creature. Terrastodon also lets me destroy non-creature permanents, so it's kind of my removal. They get elephants, no biggie, I got big ass creatures. Thorn Mammoth, also big trampler. When it enters, or when any of my other giant creatures enter, it gets to fight something, so that's kind of my creature removal. If I can get counters on that, if I can get bigger, that's usually where I go to. Titanith Rex, 11/11 trample, but I can cycle it for 2 mana and give something else trample, so once I got some of my big Hydras at 20 counters, I'd rather give them trample and whatnot if they don't have the option already. Toski, again, lets me draw cards, indestructible, fits the whole theme of the deck. A lot of attacking creatures. Tree Shaker Chimera, it's kind of a big taunting effect, so everything's got to block it. And if it dies, I get to draw 3 cards, some card advantage. Yeva lets me play all my large creatures at flash speed, which is phenomenal in this deck. Eudora is great too, because now when my creatures die, they come back as forests, which fuel for the rest of my deck. Worldspine Worm dies, gets me 3 5/5s, and when gets shuffled into my graveyard, so automatically it's just a constant large body. Wayward Swordtooth, Ascend shouldn't be too hard with the amount of land and permanents I have, and I can play an additional land, very beneficial. Down to the enchantments, I have Dormant Grove, so this comes in with, I put +1/+1 counters on my creatures, and then if I have something with 6 or greater, which is almost constantly happening, it transforms to Gnarled Grove Strider, giving everything vigilance, which is great. Now everything can attack and block these large creatures. Druid's Repository is great. When a creature attacks, I get a counter on it, and I could remove counters to add mana to my mana pool. It's sort of like a secondary bank that banks up on Omnath whenever needed. Garrick's Uprising lets all my creatures enter with huge power, and I get to draw cards. Given everything trample as well is great. Hibernation's End is a newer card as well, where it's got a cumulative upkeep where I can pay 1, but every time I pay the upkeep cost, it'll actually let me search my library for a creature card with equal converted mana cost and slap it on the battlefield. So that's great. I have some 1-drops, I have some 2, 3 drops, basically almost every number, so as it goes up I'll always be able to grab something, and then once it's getting to those 8, 9, 10 values, I get things like Worldspine out. Into the Wilds is an enchantment. At the beginning of my upkeep, I can look at the top card of my library, put it on the battlefield to land, very useful. Zendikar Resurgence lets me double up all my mana, and I draw a card for casting a creature spell, so, you know, 2 of the things that I've shown combined. And that's basically the deck, yeah. Here's the mana curve, you know, it's not really as proper as it should be, but, you know, it's more for the big size value. 100% green mana symbols. And, you know, I'll just kind of like cycle through some of the hands. So yeah, the deck looks really great. Just constantly have lands, constantly have these large creatures that I might not be able to get to right away, but, you know, as soon as I get to 3 in mana, Omnath comes out, and then I just start banking. By turn 4, by turn 5, I can drop something humongous. But yeah, that's the deck. You can follow me here on Moxfield, MC Sebzi. Also subscribe and like, and hope you enjoyed the content. Here you can see just, you know, general stats of the deck. But yeah, hope that's, you know, something that interests you. It's my Mana Monsters deck. Just about playing lands, playing big threats, and just going all out. But yeah, hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you next time. It's been MC Sebzi, and catch us on the Monkaroos. Easy.